daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Now Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. So what's that saying? First off, we get the impression that Leah wasn't a looker. Amen? She had a lazy eye. We might say maybe cross-eyed or some kind of deformity where she wasn't the hot one of the two. But she was the elder of the two. And they go into great detail to describe her having this delicate eye situation. But then they stress, but Leah, but Rachel. Now you see, Rachel is beautiful in form and appearance. So to me, that means she had the body and she had the looks. So now you see Laban, obvious. I had these two daughters, but you see Jacob looking at the one who's kind of cross-eyed, cockatoo. Now let's just face it, it's sad, but it's true. A lot of times people go by appearance, and you see this young lady who is basically judged by how she looks. And you see a younger, beautiful daughter. But instantly Jacob, according to verse 18, it says that Jacob loved Rachel. Amen? Now, you know, we don't know how much love it was. There might have been a little lust going on at that quick of a meeting, and all of a sudden you are so in love with this woman that you just met. But nonetheless, the scriptures say he loved her. So he agreed that he was going to serve Laban for 7 years to earn her hand in marriage. So you know this man had to be really wanting this woman if he's willing to work for 7 years just to get to marry her. So, but that's what he agreed to do. So, you know, Laban said, hey, you know, I'd rather give him to you, give her to you, you're at least a relative, rather than to, you know, let a stranger marry her. So they come into this agreement. Jacob says, all right, I'm going to work 7 years. You're going to let me marry Rachel, okay? And then it goes on, and you look at verse 20, and it says those 7 years only seem like a few days. So you know he's a man in love, right? You work 7 years, and it just feels like it was just a couple days. But I'm getting ready to get my boo now, so I can just lay back now and just enjoy the fruit of my labor. So it says that he did it 7 years, so he goes to Laban and he says, give me my wife. I fulfilled my days, that I may go into her. So obviously they have not had no relation. So for this whole 7 years, he's pining, desiring, waiting to marry her, okay? So of course, Laban's like, okay, let's have this marriage feast. He gets all his friends together. You know, they have a big old wedding feast. And so then when the evening had passed, they took Leah into Jacob at that moment when he's supposed to be consummating his marriage. Now, some stories you read in the scripture, you be like, okay, dude, now I know y'all was partying, but you must have been partying mighty hard that you don't even know who you just went to bed with. But nonetheless, all the same, you know, we know that there was important times in the marriage ceremony where the women were veiled and all those kind of things, but nonetheless, they deceiving. So they do an okie-doke, and they put the older sister in the marriage bed with him instead of the woman that he worked 7 years to get with. So needless to say, when he wakes up the next morning, he's probably pretty upset when you rolled over and you see cockeyed older sister as opposed to the young and beautiful one he thought he was marrying. Now, we're just going to be honest, because you can imagine. And so he goes to Laban, he's like, what did you do to me? You know, didn't I work 7 years for Rachel? Why did you do this? And it's so ironic that this happens to him, because if you know anything about Jacob, his name means deceiver, heel biter, because of how he deceived his own brother. So now here the shyster is getting shysted. You know, you reap what you sow, amen. So now Jacob finds himself in a situation where they done hoodwinked him. So he's obviously upset, so he goes to Laban and he's like, you know, didn't I, you know, work 7 years for Rachel? Why did you do this thing to me? So now we're at verse 26. You know, so Laban gives him this long excuse, you know, well, it's not right in our country for the younger daughter to get married before the older daughter. So, you know, we had to do this. Now, of course, they didn't tell him that while he was working 7 years, but nonetheless, and all the same, you know, he has this excuse for why he, you know, he did this to him. But he's like, just go ahead and fulfill her week. So in their custom, their marriage ceremonies often lasted a week long. They would celebrate. And it would have been extremely embarrassing for him to walk out on Leah, so much so that it would have been a family offense. He would have basically had to fight all the brothers and everybody else in the family had he disrespected her and just said, this ain't who I was going to marry, kick her to the curb. And especially in those days when virginity was a woman's value. So now she's no longer a virgin, so she really wouldn't have even been qualified. Most men wouldn't even have wanted her at that point. Because every man wanted a virgin, because they knew that Christ was going to be born through a virgin. So they didn't understand. They were thinking it was going to come through their seed. So that was the value of a woman, her virginity. So she's already lost that. So it would have been the brothers' rights and the cousins and uncles to defend her honor. So instead of going through all of that, he's like, okay, I'm going to fulfill this week. But the promise was, if you fulfill this week with her, then we'll give you Rachel too. And then you just work another 7 years for me. Now, I want you to think about this for a second, because I had to look this up. I'm like, okay, so did he work 7 more years before he got with Rachel? Well, the study shows that they literally married the next week. And then he worked the 7 years off. So can you imagine? He just married your older sister. 1 week later, he marries you. Can you imagine the problems in that sister relationship when y'all have the same husband? And you know that he didn't want you. We're talking about Leah's story today. We're not going to focus so much on Rachel. How Leah would have had to feel as that unwanted woman who basically her dad done, conned a man to marry her, that obviously doesn't even love her. And so now your sister, who he does love, is in the same house with you because now she's also his wife. Can you imagine? Am I the only one that was like, I mean, you can imagine the hostility that would be going on between these two sisters. And so much so that it even tells us down here that when, we'll get down a little bit, let's get to verse 28 and 29 going through 30. When he does go in with Rachel, he says, and he also loved her more than Leah. So it wasn't no secret who he wanted to be with. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even an attempt to make it amicable.